In 1976, Darrell Pace shot in the Olympics. The stabilisation system was a tapered aluminium rod plus back rods similar to that with a TFC on the stop vibration, which was invented by Earl Hoyt. Darrell went on to win the gold medal, but in that he shot, I can't remember exactly what the bow weight was, but it was in excess of 40 pounds. I think his arrows were a 1914 or a 2014, but he broke 1300 with that. His button was what they call a Berger button, which was just a brass tube. It was pretty standard and basic stuff, but he was a phenomenal shooter, and he could make anything that he put onto his bow work for him because he understood the parameters of what he was working with. So stabilisation was built specifically around him with the help of his coach. I think it was Al Henderson at the time, but I think his father was a big influence on his coaching as well. But it's remarkable what he shot. He also then went on to shoot in Japan, and he shot in excess of 13, almost 1340 or 14. I'm not really sure of the exact score he shot, but that was in the early 80s at that time. So stabilisation has come on a long way since then. These are high modulus carbon fibre stabilisers. Were very, very small, OD 14 of these particular ones, made with high modulus carbon. Very, very, very stiff, very expensive, based on a German company that we're working with, that they're making particularly for the aerospace industry. So we were able to use this particular type of carbon on it, and it works out fairly well. But I'll explain a little bit more. These are the new kids on the block. Everybody seems to be going for these things now, this type of stabiliser. Prior to that, as I said, with Darrell Pace, shooting in the 1976 Olympics, he shot with a tapered aluminium rod with back rods very similar to this with TFCs on them, which were invented by Earl Hoyt. He shot 1300 in that particular competition to win the gold medal. His first, I think, was over 1250 or 1260, but his second one at the competition was over 1300. He subsequently went on to shoot well over 1340 using aluminium arrows. I think in the Olympics in 76, his arrows were a 1914 or a 2014 aluminium arrow. So it was a phenomenal achievement. So stabilisation has come on a long way since that. In the early stages, you had your tapered rods. Then people started to invent different types of stabilisers. So they came out with this type of thing, which is what they call the bazooka. It was very, very successful, done a great job in shooting, but this was the fashion at one stage. That was coming up into the 80s. Then you had rods similar to this, built by an American guy, and Darrell Pace shot these particular rods. These were multi-purpose rods, where you had different types of carbon built into a system, bringing the whole thing together. The vibration factor was very, very low on these. Massive, massive achievement. I think Biter made this particular rod famous. Very, very good rod. Then Carbofast had a look at innovation. And this is a rod, a multi-purpose rod. It goes in to 7 inches, but as you pull it out, it's like telescopic. It can go up to 15 inches. So they made those in different types. We had it on the long rod. It was again, it went into 25 inches and went up to 35 inches. So, and these were called quadro rods. So they were invented by Carbofast. You then had the Carbofast handle, which is all carbon handle. This was, first one was constructed, it was called the Emerald Star. That was in the early 80s. We made this particular bow. Carbofast made this particular bow, full carbon again. It also had the pocket systems where you could adjust your pockets by a dial system so that you could bring your limbs into line on that particular handle. Then we subsequently made this handle then a little bit better, and then we made extra ones that we had actually cutouts on them. But all in all, we didn't make all that many of them. Carbofast was primarily in the aerospace business. So my accountant used to go into a faint when I talked about archery. We used to make seat backs for airplanes, other apparatus for the medical industry as well. And archery bow handles were very, very, very low on the pecking order. We also made compound handles in carbon fibre. These were made for a company in America. I think they made about 20,000 of these in there. Some very, very good shots shot these. They were mainly for hunting bows. Very, very, very light. That was another invention on carbon technology. So we'll look at stabilization. That's a rod built, I think, in Korea or China. It's basically glass and maybe a top of your carbon. We don't know exactly what's in it, but there's a very simple way of doing that. What you do is you cut a piece off and you burn it, and you find out exactly what the makeup of that particular rod is. So this one will cost you 200 or 300 euros. This one will cost you 25 euros. Is one better than the other? It's very subjective. It's very, very hard to know what's the best. It's a very personal, very, very, very personal system, stabilization. When we started off first on the stabilization, we found that you had X1, X2 and X3. X1 was very, very soft, soft feel to it. X2 was slightly stiffer, and then the X3 was done with high modulus. And the holding characteristics on the X3 was really phenomenal in relation to the shooting. And some of the top shots in Europe shot with them, the likes of Teeny Rainiers, or we had Mannix for Fink, I think shot them, Francis Notablum, a lot of the Belgian team shot them and things like that. So we had a fairly good run with Stabiliser in the early 80s. So we had to have a look at what happens with a stabilizer. How does it work? Basically what happens is vibration is not a factor in stabilization. It's the holding characteristics that's the important thing. When you shoot a bow, whether you're recurve or compound, the arrow is gone in 12 milliseconds. So the vibration is not a factor. It only starts to oscillate when the arrow is oscillating in the target, even at 90 meters. So the vibration is something that it's not really relevant. What's relevant is the balance of the bow and the holding characteristics of the stabilization built around the archer himself. As I say, when you shoot a bow, recurve or compound, the arrow is gone in 12 milliseconds. So what happens with the stabilizer is that the first initial shock hits the stabilizer, and the stabilizer goes into what they call 8 movement. And then after the 8 movement, it goes into oscillation. And that's where the vibration is coming from. But the arrow is long gone at that stage. So whether, not that I want to be spitting in the soup, but whether that's better or that's better, it's very subjective. It's not really something you can quantify. So what we did to try and find out a little bit more about stabilization, we were in league with Matthew Simons in Manchester University, and we'd done a program on stabilization and the vibration, and we had different archers at different levels shooting different. I'd made different prototypes to see exactly what the vibration factors were and how they worked and what happened with them. So one chap, one of the students, on a project on stabilisation, and 95% of it was inconclusive. So it's that personal. Stabilisation is a very, very personal thing. What suits one person won't suit the next person. So what you've got to do is you've got to go out and you've got to try that. Now, nobody makes bad stabilisers. It's like cars. Nobody makes bad cars, or nobody makes bad airplanes. But airplanes crash. Cars break down. So it's your perception of what you think is better for you, whether it's a very, very stiff system or a very, very long system, or what you're looking for. But the whole parameter in shooting the bow is the balance of the bow, holding the balance of the bow, the holding characteristics of the bow. As I said before, the arrow's gone in 12 milliseconds. So vibration, to a certain extent, is not really a factor at this stage. Anyway, in carbon fibre, the fibre itself doesn't absorb vibration. What absorbs the vibration is the resonance system within the makeup of the stabilizer. Now, you can reduce vibration and stabilize by orientating the fibre in the stabilizer. Now, not very many people will do that. What they do is they usually use unidirectional. Now, there's 3 different types of systems you can use. You can use pultrusion, filament winding, and wrap system. A wrap system is where you use a mandrel and you wrap your carbon fibre around the mandrel and you bake it in an oven, you cellophane wrap it and put it into an oven, and basically it comes out, and then you put it through a central grind and you grind off the ridges on the stabilisation. Filament winding is where it's a continuous fillet on a floating mandrel. That's mainly to use that for kite manufacturing, for the stays on kites and things like that, and other industrial applications. Filament winding, much the same type of system and things like that. So they all work very, very well. But you can reduce the vibration in stabilisation only by orientating the fibres. Otherwise, when you shoot it, you get oscillation and you get a lot of vibration coming back. But the arrow is well gone at that particular stage. As I say, there was all different types of stabilisers. You had multi-rods, you had big bazookas, short rods, TFCs, you had multi-quadro rods that you can make longer and shorter. That was a good idea in that, because you could actually balance the bow off for yourself on that end of it. Then it came down to making what you call bow handles. Carbofast built bow handles. I think we were one of the first to build them with using bushings. You have a system where you can alter the pitch of the limb, handles, the whole lot. We've never had any breakages on that, and then we built for a company in America maybe 20,000 of these compound bow handles as well. So we knew exactly what we were doing. Now, we never made limbs, but people who made limbs, these were built by Border. Sid Ball, I think, was one of the first. Himself and Keith Gascoigne, I think, between the two of them, they use orientation of the fibre to stop torque on the limbs. Very, very similar to what they do with golf shafts. So you have a golf shaft and you want to, hit the ball on the sweet spot. If the rod is not, the shaft is not stiff enough, it'll turn the head. This works the very, very same way. So I think it was, maybe I'm wrong, but I need to say it was Sid Ball who invented this system going back, and that was in the early 80s. Very, very good limb, good fade out, carbon fibre in through the whole system. Very hard residual torque, 45-degree angle on the carbon fibre system that they put in. Now, the carbon fibre is good for stiffness, but it's not good for, glass is much better for giving you the results of your shooting. But some people might disagree with that, but that's That's there for the, what do you call it, the scientists to work out. But nevertheless, there's a lot of innovation on the different bows. So bows had, in the early 70s, metal handle bows. You had Brackenbelt, fantastic Mr. Brackenbelt greenhorn bows. You had marksman bows from England, fantastic bows. You know, Keith Gascoigne made beautiful bows. Border made beautiful bows, all European. And then of course you have height. Now height, the parameter of the height bow hasn't changed since Earl Height invented it. So the parameters are very, very, very similar. So everybody else copied height bows, you know, in basically on handles. Limbs, they improved on that. And then you have now Korean companies building carbon fibre handles and all that sort of stuff, and saying vibration this and vibration that. Yeah, it does. Vibration is a factor on carbon fibre. Yeah, it's much lower on the carbon, but whether that's an advantage or a disadvantage, that has to be borne out by a scientific approach to it. And I think if you shoot an aluminium handle or you shoot what you call a carbon handle, you know, putting it into the hands of a very, very top archer, you won't find much in the difference between one and the other. But maybe the vibration factor might be a little bit different. Maybe he mightn't get tennis elbow. There are all those parameters, and it's a very personal choice in what you're working on. So basically what we're saying is stabilisation. The stiffer the rod, you get a lot more vibration, but the steadier the shot. So vibration is not a factor because the arrow is well gone. Now, some people can't hack that. So what they do is you can lower the orientation of the fibre to not so stiff, and then you can go down a little bit more, down to, as I say, the X1, X2 and X3, which will give a fit that will make you shoot and feel more comfortable with your bow. And that's what it's about, feeling comfortable with the bow, getting the bow to shoot for you. So vibration, I wouldn't worry about vibration on stabilisation. It's not a big problem. You know, you could put iron bars. We tried putting brass rods in Manchester. We tried using steel. The bows all fell apart, but the arrow still hit in the same spot. The bow was terribly noisy, but the arrow was well gone at that particular stage. So it was the balance that really worked out in your stabilisation system. So again, just to recap, when the initial energy hits it, the bow dispels its energy. The energy then transfers into the arrow, which takes about 75% of it. The rest then is absorbed in the body of the bow and the archer and the stabilisation. And it goes into an 8 movement, and after the 8 movement it goes into oscillation, and that's where you feel the vibration at that stage. But remember, as I said, it's gone in 12 milliseconds. So it's the balance that's the important thing. So I hope this explains a little bit about stabilisation and where we're coming from. Okay, thank you very much.